Hey, what's up? Hello everyone, welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl. Before we dive into our predictions, we have something really fun coming up on the channel. So Matt, why don't you let everyone know what is coming?
We here on Fantasy Filmball play a game called Fantasy Filmball, and you can join in. The way this game works is you draft a team of 10 different films, and those films will collect points through the awards season, and you're going to want to have the best team out of anyone in your league. How do you join a league, you might ask? Well, you can join our Discord in the description down below, the official Fantasy Filmball, and you can be assigned to a league. Make sure you play. It's a really fun game, especially if you are on this channel watching for awards hype. This is a great way to predict Oscars and play a little fun game with it. So please join in. We hope to see you there. Today, we are going to be giving our updated mid-year Oscar predictions for the acting categories, especially now since we've seen Barbenheimer. We have so much more to talk about. We have seen some of these races really shape up in the last week. So we are going to start today off by talking about Best Actor, where Cillian Murphy is in competition. Where does he end up? Let's see on the chart. Now, as always, anything marked in purple text is something that we have seen. Anything marked in black, we have not seen yet. Starting things off with Best Actor, I have Paul Giamatti at number 1 for The Holdovers. Now, I'm not fully convinced by this as much as I was a little bit ago. We have a trailer for The Holdovers now. I think it looks fantastic. Dylan, I know you think a little bit otherwise. Something that really stands out here is Paul Giamatti looks like he's giving a really sensitive Robin Williams Dead Poets Society Good Will Hunting-esque performance. Something that has this kind of snootiness of his normal roles, but with a level of sensitivity behind it. I think that there's going to be an emotional depth to this performance that we really can't see coming. It just seems to me like a great narrative for an Oscar win. I really feel good about that. But if he doesn't win, I've got two other contenders, and those are Leonardo DiCaprio in Killers of the Flower Moon, Bradley Cooper in Maestro. Now, Leo, I don't see a narrative for a second Oscar win, especially not for Killers of the Flower Moon, but I could be wrong about that. I could be totally wrong. I think he's a surefire nomination. I just don't know about a win. Now, Bradley Cooper, he's got a great narrative for an Oscar win, but the question here is Maestro going to be a strong film? Because if it is, then sure, he could win. If it's not, maybe not. But hey, The Whale happened last year. I do think that The Whale was a special scenario because of how much love there was outpouring for Brendan Fraser and his comeback narrative. Bradley Cooper doesn't have that type of narrative, and typically we want to see the winner of this category being from a film that's also nominated for Best Picture. I don't see that being Maestro.
I think you're missing the winner of this category from your top 3, but overall, I mean, these are 3 people who I think are very much firmly in the race and probably are all getting nominated at the end of the day. I think I'm a little bit higher in Leo's chances to win just based on some of the rays, but at the same time, if you look at Killer's cast, it can't sweep like Everything Everywhere. It can't win 3 awards. I mean, it can, but is that really going to happen 2 years in a row? Most likely not. Bradley Cooper and Paul Giamatti both have great narratives, but also, at least to me, their movies don't seem as strong in the Best Picture category, where the person that you have at number 4 is who I currently have at number 1, and is in a movie I think is a top 3 Best Picture player.
I agree that Oppenheimer is a top 3 Best Picture player, but here's the thing that I'm feeling with Cillian Murphy. I think that he is being outshined by his co-stars. In the first week reactions, everyone's talking about not Cillian Murphy, but Robert Downey Jr., who does seem like a winner in his category. They're not competing against each other, but the thing that I want to ask is how many Oscars can Oppenheimer win? If it's going to largely sweep the technical categories, if it's going to pick up some craft awards, if it's competitive in director, screenplay, maybe even picture, it has to lose somewhere. And if Cillian Murphy, as the lead who's on screen for about 90% of the movie, can't sustain the same hype that his co-star has at this point, I'm not feeling great about him for a win. I'm feeling great about him for a nomination, but he does not seem like winning material.
I've seen a lot of people say Robert Downey Jr. is win competitive, and I think part of that comes down to is, I mean, a lot of people do love him. He has a great narrative, but also coming into Oppenheimer, we all kind of thought he was like a small cameo bit part. You can make a case he's either the second or third lead of the movie, and I think that's very much carrying his narrative. I think a lot of people are still noticing Cillian Murphy. They're saying he's great in the movie. They're just not giving him the as much shine, because like we expected him to be great. We expected him to be in the full movie, and I think once we get to critic awards, especially if some movies start to get pushed, he could easily start to become a critic sweeper. The last thing I will say is I think the whole movie lays on his shoulders, and if he doesn't power through, the movie crumbles beneath him. But there's still another slot in this Best Actor category that you have to fill out here, and I think I'm coming around to agree with you with this person.
I'm really debating between 3 people here, but at the moment, I've got Michael Fassbender for The Killer. I do think that The Killer is going to be a Best Picture nominee. I know that David Fincher has never had success with the Academy with his crime thrillers. Normally, if he gets in for movies, it's stuff like The Social Network or Mank. His movies like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Gone Girl, Zodiac, those don't make it in. But the counterpoint for that is that The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was probably the 10th slot in 2011. It was probably right there, almost making it in, and just missed. David Fincher pretty much always gets at least one acting nomination for his films. Even with Gone Girl, it only got Rosamund Pike in. Girl with Dragon Tattoo, you have Rooney Mara getting in. And so Michael Fassbender here, I think that he has a really strong argument, especially if the film is a Best Picture player. If not, I still think he has a good shot, but maybe not as strong. And at that point, he could be replaced with Matt Damon or Yu Teo, both of which I think are floating right by the edge. I know you might give a little bit more to Matt Damon. I might really want to lean towards Yu Teo, but I think the thing with Matt Damon is I don't see Air having a full-on resurgence because it's only really competitive in like 3 categories. And so when we see films that kind of disappear and come back later, they're usually stuff like Elvis, where it has a lot of technical support that it can run up. And I don't know if Air can do that. Past Lives, I see kind of dipping and dipping and dipping. And Yu Teo, he would be so strong if he was in supporting actor, but in actor, there's just so many larger performances and larger stars as a draw for this category. So I have to keep him kind of lower at the moment.
Yeah, I think this is the right top 7, and just your personal order should be adjusted a little bit because, I mean, with everything going on right now, maybe Maestro gets pushed to next year. That opens up a slot. And I think that Fassbender, Damon, Teo, and even going to your number 8, Coleman Domingo, are all people who are in the conversation. It's just like, which one do you want to plug and put into your number 5 slot? I think Fassbender's a good bet, but if you have Air and Picture, then it makes sense for Damon. If you have Past Lives having a very strong resurgence, it makes sense for Teo. And if you think that Maestro is either going to fail or miss or whatever, it makes sense for Domingo because that's another Netflix leading actor push.
And to speak about Domingo, I've been up and down on him the entire time. I don't really know where he's going to go, but now that Netflix has slated the film for a November release, it shows that they have some confidence in it. They're not just throwing this out. They're giving it a good release date. So yeah, Coleman Domingo and Rustin is back at my number 8. He could go up, but I don't expect him to because I have not heard great things about this film from test screenings. After that, I've got Barry Keoghan for Saltburn at number 9. Heard great things about him in this. I don't have a lot of confidence in Saltburn. At number 10, Andrew Scott for Strangers. I can't wait to see this. I want to know more about the film before I can confidently say it's a contender, but if it is a contender, he could be top 5. And then just to rattle off a couple of others that I'm looking at, Anthony Hopkins in Freud's Last Session seems like a good, promising pick right there, but not one that I'm going to bet on at the moment. Then there's also Timothée Chalamet in Dune Part 2, if the film still comes out this year. If it gets pushed, absolutely not. But he looks like he's doing a ton in this trailer. Very, very promising.
I think there's just some great shots there. Personally, I would love to see Chalamet get into the actor race. Like, probably not getting a nomination at the end of the day, but, you know, something here or there, especially when he hits the Globes, when the categories flip a little bit. You know, if Dune's great, which it probably is, and if he's great, which he probably is, some recognition for a bigger blockbuster movie would be kind of cool. Switching over to Best Actress, personally, I don't really have much movement here for this month's update. I still have Fantasia Barrino at my number 1 for The Color Purple. Do I feel great about it? Not really, but there's no one else really speaking to me for a win. Part of me wants to be crazy and put Sandra Hüller for Anatomy of a Fall at number 1. She can campaign. We know that people love this performance. We know that people love this movie. And I currently have this movie getting into picture, getting into screenplay, and getting in here to actress. So that is a nice little package. However, the Academy shows time and time again, they don't really want to go out of their way to reward a performance from an international movie unless that actor or actress is a big name American star. And Sandra Hüller is not quite that yet. But with everything going on, depending on how long it goes, maybe she could slide up, especially if Color Purple gets pushed to next year. And then I have Emma Stone at number 3. There's a chance she could just miss entirely, but also I think there's a chance that she could win. So for that, I'm putting her at my number 3 slot because my number 4 and 5s are 2 people who I don't really see a case to win, but they feel a little bit more safer for a nomination.
I like that we have the same thing going on where our top 3 are all win competitive, and then after that we're like, But I agree with you. These are the three that I think are win competitive as well. Fantasia obviously looks like a clear frontrunner if the movie stays in this year, which I think it will. I don't think we're going to see the strike go till Christmas time. That would be an incredibly long strike, and I hope that the studios break before then. Sandra Hüller, like you said, she's going to be a critic's pick. I think that this is a Cate Blanchett, Tar, and Michelle Yeoh situation. The question is, we don't really know who Michelle Yeoh is. We just know that Sandra Hüller is Cate Blanchett and Tar. And then Emma Stone, maybe she could be Michelle Yeoh, because that's going to be a lovable performance. It's going to be wacky, weird, very enticing, but at the same time, Emma Stone definitely doesn't have the same narrative thread that Michelle Yeoh had last year as a previous Oscar winner just a few years ago. But this is a great top three. I completely agree. I think I'd have it in the exact same order as you as well.
Kind of just like your best actor lineup, my next three are kind of interchangeable. It's just picking which one you think is going to do the best. To me, Greta Lee feels the safest in terms of a nomination. I don't think she's win competitive anymore after seeing Past Lives, but just sitting with the movie for another month, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm not as low on her because I had her at number 5 last time that we talked, but she's up to number 4, and I think that she could even hop Emma Stone depending on how Poor Things is received, but I don't really see her picking up many wins along the trail. Natalie Portman's my number 5 at the moment for May December. I'm still holding on to this movie in picture, but it is now down to my number 9 slot. I could easily switch this out with The Killer. I'm just really going back and forth of which one do I want to have in, and May December probably isn't hitting every nomination along the path, especially if it's a bottom tier best picture contender. So to me, this one and supporting actor seem like the two most shaky ones over original screenplay and supporting actor. And then after seeing Barbie, I could see the angle for Margot Robbie, yes. But also I know in 2019, 2020, they picked her for Bombshell over Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and then last year Babylon, where a lot of people thought she was win competitive for a long time. The movie came out, is a little bit divisive, maybe a lot of divisive, and she misses out entirely. Barbie is not divisive at the moment. However, she's not doing as much as those other two movies were. So I could see the angle for her to get in, especially if May December does drop off the map or Poor Things also falls down, but at the moment she's just outside looking in.
Here's my hot take. I think Barbie is the best performance Margot Robbie has ever given. I thought she was spectacular. Probably my favorite in the category right now, and I could see her making her way into the top 5, but I'm not going to bet on it right now until some other things move. Greta Lee, you're totally right. Not win competitive, but is very much going to be nominated. She's going to pick up some Critics Awards. Critics Awards that don't go for Sandra Hüller will probably go for Greta Lee. And then Natalie Portman, I'm going to be honest, Dylan, I've lost all faith in May December, so Natalie Portman is sitting just right outside my top 5. Almost all the actors from May December are just right on the verge of either making it or not making it, and they could really go either way depending on how the film lands. But your next person in your lineup, your number 7, Annette Bening, is someone who I have a lot higher. I've got her at my number 5 slot at the moment because I still see an argument for a narrative. I see an argument for what this type of performance is and how it'll connect with crowds. What do you think about Annette Bening?
I'm still just holding out for a trailer for some reactions. I know we're a long ways from reactions, but for a trailer to move her up, because she could easily be not in the same way as, but sort of like the Bill Nighy route for Living last year, where we're like, maybe not, and then it just becomes, okay, clearly they're in. That's the path I think it could come to, but like you said, of May December is a little bit lower. Yes, if Barbie and Margot Robbie doesn't find their way in, or Emma Stone's out, Annette Bening, that's why she's at my number 7, easily can move up there. Everyone after Annette Bening, though, I don't really see the case for. I know there's some people out online who are like, oh my gosh, Jessica Lange, she's number 1, she's number 2. I don't really see that. I think this is another case of a stage to screen performance that just doesn't pick up traction anywhere along the way. But if delays happen, if movies drop, maybe she could come up. Tiana Taylor is one I'm kind of just holding out hope for, because this category is a little weak once you get to the bottom. And then Carey Mulligan Maestro, if this is a big picture player, maybe, but I don't really see it. And I know there's other people out there. I know that you've mentioned Kaylee Spaney before for Priscilla. Yeah. I don't see this movie doing anything, so that's why I don't even have her in my 10.
That's very fair. You know what? I think you make some really, really good cases there. I do think that you might be giving Tiana Taylor a little bit too much credit. The route for her was that she'd have to win critic awards, and it's shaping up that there are some other strong critic contenders. I think Tiana Taylor's mostly going to be forgotten by the end of the year, as good as she was in the role. But I get that it's a passion pick, a hope diction, in the same way that for me, like, Glenn Howerton in Blackberry is like in my top 10 for supporting actor for the same reason, which I'm sure you'll talk about a little bit later. Maybe put Carey Mulligan a little bit higher up for Maestro. I've heard her performance is quite good. Anyways, let's move on to the next category. We got supporting actress coming up. At number 1 for me right here, I've got Lily Gladstone. Still, no one has dethroned her yet. There's been so many shakeups in other categories, and yet so far it just looks like Lily Gladstone might be running away with this award. That could change very quickly when we see some other films, but nothing is challenging it yet.
I fully agree with you. Until a challenger presents themselves, it's Gladstone all the way. But I mean, just like last year, maybe she could go lead like Michelle Williams. I don't think that will happen. Crazy things could happen. And this is the only category where neither of us have seen a movie that we have in the top 5 for this category.
It's true. That is true. We haven't seen any of these contenders at this point. All the contenders we have seen are just right below. Those purple ones at 6, 7, 8 right there. So I'll go over the next 2, because these are the 2 that I feel really confident in right now. And then afterwards, I'm kind of like, I don't exactly know. This seems like a solid 5 at the moment, but at the same time, it feels like there's some weakness in this 5. So my next 2 are Danielle Brooks for The Color Purple and Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers. Now, Danielle Brooks, apparently her role always gets absolute raves on Broadway. Now, I watched The Color Purple, a bootleg of it on YouTube, and when I say that, I mean like the stage show on Broadway. I personally found myself connecting to Shug more, the character that is played by Taraji P. Henson. It's undeniable that people do talk about Danielle Brooks' character a lot more. So Danielle Brooks is my number 2. I think she's very solid for a nomination. I don't see it being a winning material performance though. And then number 3, Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers. We saw some footage of her recently in the trailer. I think she looks great, funny, very warm, a very endearing character overall. I can see her being a really solid nomination contender here, especially because it looks like she has a lot of screen time. But I again, don't see this being a role that could lead to a win. It feels kind of, just to reference another Alexander Payne movie, feels a lot like June Squibb in Nebraska, who had a lot of presence, a lot of joy, a lot of humor in the role, but definitely wasn't doing enough to translate that to a win.
Divine Joy Randolph is someone who's always very good in whatever movie or show they're in. Dolomite, They Stole the Show. The Idol is a show a lot of people don't like, but she's really good in that. And Danielle Brooks, like you said, the people who have seen Color Purple in terms of the Broadway play have clamored to that role. What I think is the most fun part, because I also think Taraji P. Henson's pretty in there, assuming Color Purple is a picture player, for our double nomination this year is that number 5 slot, because if you have air and picture, Viola Davis makes sense. If they just clamor Barbie with love, you have a multitude of people you could pick from there. And then if they want to over-nominate Oppenheimer, you have Emily Blunt. And I mean, as you talked about in lead actor, David Fincher always gets one actor in there. Could it be Tilda Swinton?
At the moment, I'm going with Julianne Moore in May December, but like I said before, I think everyone in May December is totally on the fence. They could all miss. They could all be nominated. I don't really know how it's going to land. Right now, I only have Julianne Moore. Julianne Moore is my very shaky number 5 here, and she could so easily drop out. Like you said, Viola Davis, if we see an air resurgence, she comes right back up. Emily Blunt, I'd be kind of pissed if she got nominated. She is overdue for a nomination because she's Emily Blunt and she's been everywhere forever and she's never been nominated before. Her role is so poorly written in this movie. She has 2 incredible scenes at the very end of this movie. Her court scene and the scene outside of the home where she speaks with Oppie. Great work. The rest of the movie, she is just the sad housewife. It would be a little bit upsetting. You mentioned Barbie. I'd say America Ferrera is the pick from Barbie, but I don't have her in my top 5. She's got a great monologue later on. But yeah, I think she did a good job in this movie. I just didn't see it as like a performance on the same level as Gosling, on the same level as Robbie. That said, she's clearly in the top 10 at this point. Finishing the top 10 off right here. Claire Foy for Strangers could be big if the movie's big. Tilda Swinton for The Killer, apparently a very small role, but you know what? This category has no depth at this point. We don't know. What else is there? Penelope Cruz in Ferrari? No. Elizabeth Moss in Next Goal Wins? No. Zendaya for Dune Part 2, as much as I'd like to, I mean, Dune could move in the next couple of days, couple of weeks. And Isabella Rossellini in La Chimera doesn't seem like a good shot for me. So either we're going to see some big surprises coming to the festival circuit, or it's just going to be the shallowest category that we've got this year outside of original screenplay.
That moves us over to Best Supporting Actor. We're kind of similar to every other category. There's a big three in front for a wing competition. Robert De Niro, Killers of the Flower Moon. Robert Downey Jr., Oppenheimer. And Ryan Gosling, Barbie. I think if you take your pick between one of those three, you probably have our winner in this category. It's just where are you leaning to at the moment. I thought Gosling was great in Barbie. However, I am very hesitant for a strictly comedic performance to win an Academy Award. I know what's happened in the past. It's been a little bit. I would love to see it, but I don't know how to feel about it at the moment. Robert Downey Jr. is great in Oppenheimer, as I mentioned above, though. I just don't see really the winning angle outside of, oh, it's Robert Downey Jr. He needs to win. We love him, blah, blah, blah. It's the Jamie Lee Curtis route from last year. And then you have Robert De Niro, Killers of the Flower Moon. From people who saw it at Cannes, they said he's great. He's getting older. This could be one of your last time to see him get an award. And right now, I do have Killers winning 2 acting awards, both supporting categories, because I still do have this as my Best Picture winner. However, if it does drop off of my number 1 for Best Picture, and with how everything is going on at the moment, it just kind of makes sense between this and Oppenheimer, but I'm keep teetering between which one I want to do. And right now I have De Niro, Killers of the Flower Moon. I don't feel great about this as well, but this top 3, I feel like if you pluck one of these names, you have like a 30% chance of getting it right.
I don't think Robert De Niro has a winning shot. I don't see the narrative for him personally. I don't see why they do it for Robert De Niro when, you know, he's won multiple Oscars in the past. He would need to really earn it for this role, and I don't see it at this point. I think Killers of the Flower Moon is a one-win movie for Lily Gladstone. But if you got it as your Best Picture pick, then sure, you can have De Niro at number 1. But you know who does have the narrative to win? Robert Downey Jr. And I know that you said you don't think he has it outside of just being Robert Downey Jr. I think the narrative for him, not only is he going to be an incredibly charismatic campaigner, pre-strike he recorded so many interviews that especially if we don't get any more content from movies through the year in terms of promotional content, his stuff is going to stand out. The fact that he is basically a pseudo lead, like he is the lead for about 30% of Oppenheimer. He's got a big role, it's very juicy, and it allows him to stretch his strengths. It allows him to play that sort of Tony Stark charisma, that classic Robert Downey Jr. charisma that he always shows, but in a kind of like a snake-like way where he's always out to stab someone in the back. It's perfect casting. There's a great narrative with the fact that Robert Downey Jr. he went from being a pariah within Hollywood to becoming an icon. He has just made such a great narrative for himself. On a personal level, on a political level, he is an easy person to vote for, and his performance in the movie, I think, kind of justifies a win. He wouldn't be my pick. It's easy to see a route for a win. Ryan Gosling, I got to agree with you. It's a great performance. It's hard to see something like that win. That said, there is a lot of dynamic range in this role. There's a mix of humor and anger and frustration and sadness. It's not just a one-note himbo performance, as I was kind of worried it would be. He's doing a lot in this role, and that could get him to a win. But I think, if anything, this is going to be future fuel for a future Ryan Gosling win.
Getting the nomination would be kid enough for him. But at number 4, I have Charles Melton for May December. I know that you have moved him out. Like I said, I still have this teetering on my Best Picture lineup, either just in or just out. So for me, if this movie's in picture, he probably comes along with it. And I still think John Magaro for Past Lives has an angle. He's the one who I'm most likely to take out. I want to bring in a Color Purple person, either Domingo or Corey Hawkins, or a Poor Things guy with Willem Dafoe or Mark Ruffalo. If Glenn Howerton starts to get some buzz on the trail, Blackberry come in at my number 5 slot. And I don't think Killers of the Flower Moon's getting a double nomination, but Jesse Plemons is staying in my 10 just in case. Everything I've heard, he isn't really in the movie that much, and that scene in the trailer is kind of his moment, which isn't like a really big moment. However, I'm not making the same mistake as I had before, Power the Dog, and just not putting him in there all year long, because there's not really a lot of other names I'm missing at the moment. I feel good just leaving him at 10, essentially until the movie comes out.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think Mark Ruffalo has a huge chance at a win if it's not Robert Downey Jr. I think Ruffalo has a similar narrative, just in terms of constantly delivering quality work, and I think he's giving like a Ryan Gosling Barbie type performance as like a kind of himbo character in like a weird Victorian setting. He is going to be hilarious in this role. I can't wait to see what he's doing. He chews up every single second that he's in the trailer. I do think that we're gonna see him as being in the win conversation when eyes are laid on this film. But for now, I can't put him at number 1. I got him firmly at number 2. Otherwise, Glenn Howerton, you're right. The thing with this performance is that his whole narrative would be if he started to get critic awards. Because this week we've seen such an influx of crazy, amazing performances, I see less of an angle for Glenn Howerton now that we know critics are going to go with someone else. You know who I do think is missing from your top 10, though? Dominic Sessa for The Holdovers. This looks like Lucas Hedges in Manchester by the Sea. It looks like the same type of performance, a very emotional teen actor being introduced onto the scene in a movie that at least I think could be a big Best Picture player. I think it's top 5 for Best Picture, and if so, and if it's getting other acting nominations, Dominic Sessa could easily come along for a nomination because it looks like he's doing a lot. It's very emotional, it looks very funny, a very engaging performance, and I would love to see him at least in your top 10, if not top 10, maybe number 11.
I mean, I guess it makes more sense for the supporting actor category. I just go back to last year for The Fabelmans. We had a performance that arguably is probably like top 3, top 4, and still missed out because it was from a younger actor. So, I mean, to me, just kind of like other things that we've mentioned so far, I just really need to see it happen. So, like, a comedy performance winning, I don't know. A youth performance getting in, I don't really know with this current Academy because it hasn't happened in such a long time. But if the movie comes out, it's getting raves. Yes, I will throw it up into my top 10. But with all that being said, that is the end of our mid-year acting predictions. So let us know down below, what are some of your bold takes so far? We would love to know. But until next time, my name is Dyl.
And my name is Matt, and this is Fantasy Filmball.